The rules of engagement in the Middle East have just been completely erased. We are no longer looking at proportionate responses or careful geopolitical signaling. The United States and Israel just crossed a massive, irreversible red line. And they did it by executing a highly coordinated series of devastating decapitation strikes. They didn't just target empty warehouses or abandoned radar arrays in the middle of the desert. They went directly for the absolute highest tier of Iran's military and security command. Israel has officially confirmed the assassination of Ali Larijani. He was the acting secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. This isn't just a battlefield commander we're talking about here. This is the architect of their entire national defense strategy. He was the man coordinating their geopolitical moves and domestic security protocols. But the strikes absolutely did not stop there, because they also successfully took out Gholam Reza Soleimani. He was the head of the massive, deeply entrenched Basij paramilitary force. To understand how massive this is, you have to understand what the Basij actually does. They are the absolute backbone of Iran's internal security network and volunteer militia system. Taking out both of these men simultaneously is a catastrophic blow to the Iranian command structure. It is the military equivalent of a massive earthquake, hitting their leadership in the middle of a war. When you eliminate the strategists running the war room, you create absolute chaos on the ground. And while the leadership in Tehran is reeling from these high-profile assassinations, the United States is relentlessly pressing its own massive, overwhelming offensive. Under the banner of Operation Epic Fury, American forces are unleashing absolute devastation. They are systematically hunting down any asset that threatens the global supply chain, and they just deployed incredibly heavy bunker buster munitions directly near the Strait of Hormuz. Think about what it actually means to authorize the use of a bunker buster. These are not your standard lightweight laser-guided missiles. These are massive, incredibly destructive weapons designed to physically penetrate deep underground. They are built to smash through layers of reinforced concrete and solid earth before detonating. American forces use these massive weapons to completely obliterate heavily fortified anti-ship missile sites. They are desperately trying to violently pry open the world's most critical shipping lane. Because right now, commercial shipping companies are absolutely terrified to put their vessels in those waters. And honestly, you cannot blame them when the physical risk of sinking is this high. Just hours ago, a massive Barbados-flagged commercial tanker attempted to make the crossing through the strait. This was a massive vessel just trying to move physical commodities through an international waterway. But the moment the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps went on high alert, the captain of that tanker made the immediate, panicked decision to completely abandon the bid. They turned that massive ship completely around rather than risk taking a direct missile hit. The physical fear on the water is completely paralyzing the global maritime industry, and the sheer, unfiltered violence of this 3-week war is spiraling completely out of control. We are now looking at a staggering death toll that has already surpassed 1,400 people inside Iran, 1,400 lives lost in just 21 days of relentless, heavy bombardment. And the fury on the streets of Tehran is reaching an absolute, uncontrollable boiling point. Massive, angry crowds are pouring into the streets, demanding immediate retaliation. They are actively burning effigies of President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister. They are gathering in huge numbers to mourn the victims of a devastating U.S. strike on the Iranian warship Iris Dina. This is a civilian population that is being rapidly mobilized for a total, uncompromising war. And that violence is actively spilling over into neighboring countries with devastating human consequences. Just look at the absolute tragedy that unfolded in Beirut, Lebanon, on March 18th. An Israeli airstrike completely leveled a multi-story residential building right in the middle of the city. The physical destruction was absolute, leaving nothing behind but a massive crater and shattered concrete. Israel publicly stated they were targeting embedded Hezbollah assets and claimed prior warnings were given to the area. But the grim, unavoidable reality on the ground is that 12 civilians were killed in the blast. It is a brutal, terrifying reminder that when a superpower conflict goes fully kinetic, the collateral damage to the civilian population is absolutely catastrophic. And here is the most terrifying part about these decapitation strikes and the rising civilian death toll. When you back a massive military power into a corner and systematically eliminate their top strategists, they do not just surrender, wave a white flag, and ask for a diplomatic peace treaty. They lash out with absolutely everything they have left in their arsenal. Iran has officially realized that their conventional military infrastructure is being dismantled piece by piece. They know they cannot outgun the United States Navy in a head-to-head firefight over the Strait of Hormuz, so they have made the terrifying decision to completely change the rules of the entire game. If the US and Israel are going to target their leadership, their warships, and their security councils, Iran has decided they are going to systematically dismantle the physical backbone of the global economy. They are shifting their crosshairs away from heavily defended military bases and radar arrays, And they are aiming their most advanced long-range ballistic missiles directly at the Gulf's energy grid. Because if Iran is going to burn, they have decided they are taking the entire region's energy supply down with them. Let's think about how a cornered military actually fights back. When your top security commanders are assassinated and your bases are getting hammered by bunker busters, you don't just sit back and take the hit. Iran just made a terrifying calculated pivot that changes the entire scope of this war. They looked at the map of the Middle East and realized exactly where the Western world is most vulnerable, and they decided to go straight for the absolute jugular of the global economy. Just hours after Israel launched a devastating strike on Iran's largest natural gas plant, Tehran issued a region-wide broadcast that should terrify every single person watching the energy markets. They officially declared that a massive number of energy assets across the entire Gulf are now considered legitimate military targets. And they absolutely did not wait to make good on that terrifying promise, because almost immediately, an unprecedented wave of ballistic missiles completely lit up the night sky across the Middle East. We are talking about a highly coordinated multi-country barrage aimed directly at the physical energy grid. In the United Arab Emirates, massive explosions rocked the Habshan gas plants and the critical Bab field. The UAE government immediately issued a fierce public condemnation of the attacks. But public condemnations do not put out the fires raging inside massive physical gas processing facilities. Let's actually break down why these specific UAE targets are so critical. These aren't just random dots on a map. These are the lifeblood of the Emirates' physical economy. The Bab field is one of the absolute largest onshore physical oil and gas fields in the entire region. And Habshan is the central processing hub that physically connects that energy to the rest of the world. By targeting these specific, hypercritical choke points, Iran is sending a mafia-style message to the entire Arab world. They are proving that all the billions of dollars spent on Western air defense systems cannot guarantee total protection. And the strikes absolutely did not stop at the UAE border, because Iranian missiles also slammed directly into critical Saudi Arabian refineries located all the way in Riyadh. Saudi Arabia is the undisputed heavyweight champion of global oil production. An attack on their physical refining capacity is an attack on the absolute baseline of global economic stability. Every single time a missile lands on a Saudi refinery, the physical price of gasoline in the United States ticks upward. It is a brutal, undeniable equation of cause and effect. Think about the massive geographical spread of this retaliation. Iran is actively proving that no oil rig, no pipeline, and no refinery in the entire region is safe from their crosshairs. But the absolute crown jewel of this devastating retaliation, the strike that is sending absolute shockwaves through the global physical energy market right now, happened right in the sovereign territory of Qatar. Iran launched a direct, devastating missile strike on the Ras Laffan industrial city. To understand why this is a massive global emergency, you have to understand what Ras Laffan actually is. It is not just a standard energy plant. It is officially the single largest liquefied natural gas production facility on the entire planet. This one specific facility is the beating heart of the global LNG supply chain. It single-handedly accounts for roughly 20% of the entire world's liquefied natural gas supply. 1/5 of the physical gas that powers homes, factories, and entire nations flows through this exact location. And right now, Qatar is officially reporting that the facility has sustained extensive catastrophic damage. Multiple reports confirm that the massive plant was literally set on fire as a result of the Iranian missile strike. Just try to visualize the sheer scale of an inferno at the world's largest natural gas processing center. This isn't just a blow to Qatar's economy. This is a direct, violent amputation of the global energy grid. When you instantly take 20% of the world's physical LNG supply completely offline, the shockwave hits every single physical supply chain on Earth within hours. Because natural gas doesn't just heat homes in the winter. It is the physical fuel that powers the massive industrial factories manufacturing everyday goods. It is the essential physical component required to produce agricultural fertilizer to grow our food. When Ras Laffan burns, the cost of physical survival for the everyday American completely skyrockets. And the diplomatic fallout from this catastrophic strike is moving just as fast as the physical fires. Because Qatar has historically tried to walk a very careful diplomatic tightrope in the Middle East. They have often acted as a quiet mediator, maintaining working relationships with both Washington and Tehran. But the moment Iranian missiles slammed into their most prized economic asset, that careful diplomatic tightrope completely snapped. In a massive, unprecedented move, Qatar has officially expelled Iran's military and security attachés. They are actively kicking top-tier Iranian officials out of the country in direct response to the Ras Laffan strike. This signals a complete, irreversible collapse of Gulf diplomacy. The nations that were desperately trying to stay neutral and keep the peace are now being violently dragged into the crossfire. And this is exactly what Iran wants. They are employing a brutal strategy of absolute regional chaos. They want the United States to look at the burning refineries in Saudi Arabia. They want Washington to look at the massive fires consuming 20% of the global LNG supply in Qatar. They want the American public to realize that this war cannot be contained to a few drone bases in the desert. Iran is making it abundantly clear that if they are going to suffer under heavy American bombardment, they are going to drag the entire physical global economy down into the fire, right alongside them. And honestly, this terrifying strategy of mutual economic destruction is actually working, because the sheer panic rippling through the physical energy markets is completely unprecedented. The price of Brent crude oil just violently surged to an astronomical $110 a barrel, and that massive spike in physical energy costs is immediately bleeding directly into the American economy. We are already seeing official reports that producer price index inflation has just hit a brutal 13-month high. The massive cost of this war is no longer just a distant abstract number on a Pentagon spreadsheet. It is a very real, very painful physical reality hitting everyday citizens right at the grocery store checkout line. And while the United States scrambles to contain the massive economic bleeding caused by these strikes, a completely different superpower is quietly stepping into the shadows of this conflict. Because Iran isn't pulling off these highly accurate, devastating missile strikes entirely on their own. They are receiving massive covert assistance from one of America's absolute biggest geopolitical rivals. And this hidden alliance is about to make the war in the Middle East infinitely more dangerous. And while the physical energy grid of the Middle East is quite literally burning to the ground, the most dangerous geopolitical players on the planet are using this exact moment to make their move, because this conflict has officially expanded far beyond a regional dispute between the United States and Iran. It has morphed into a massive, high-stakes proxy war involving the absolute biggest military rivals of the West. Let's talk about what Vladimir Putin is actually doing behind the scenes right now. When Israel and the United States executed those high-profile decapitation strikes, the Russian president did not just sit back and watch from the sidelines. Putin immediately stepped up to the international microphone and delivered a massive, calculated public condemnation. He officially went on the record calling the assassination of Ali Larijani an outright murder. He claimed that the United States and Israel had completely broken all rules of human morality and international law. Now, if you understand global geopolitics, you know that this kind of statement from Moscow is deeply hypocritical. But Putin isn't making these statements because he suddenly cares about international law. He is making them to publicly position Russia as the ultimate defender of the Iranian regime. He is sending a clear diplomatic signal to the entire anti-Western world that Moscow stands with Tehran. But the terrifying reality is that Russia's involvement in this war goes so much deeper than just diplomatic press conferences. Because breaking reports from the Wall Street Journal just exposed exactly what is happening in the shadows. Russia is actively and aggressively engaging in direct military cooperation with Iranian forces. They are quietly funneling massive amounts of advanced military hardware directly into the war zone. According to the latest intelligence, Russia has been providing highly improved next-generation drone technology to Tehran. Think about the absolute nightmare scenario of this technological feedback loop. For years, Iran has been building cheap, effective suicide drones and exporting them around the world. But now, a global superpower with an incredibly advanced aerospace industry is taking those designs, upgrading them with state-of-the-art Russian technology, and handing them back to the Iranian military. They are giving Iran the exact weapons they need to overwhelm American air defenses in the region. And the military assistance does not just stop at the physical hardware, because Russia is also providing something infinitely more dangerous than just upgraded drones. They are actively expanding their intelligence sharing network and providing real-time data to the Iranian military. We are talking about highly classified, military-grade satellite imagery being fed directly to Tehran. Let that sink in for a second, because the strategic implications of this are absolutely catastrophic. The United States military relies heavily on secrecy, rapid movement, and electronic warfare to protect its troops. When American aircraft carriers move through the Gulf, or when troops reposition at a desert base, they expect those movements to remain completely hidden from the enemy's radar. But when a superpower like Russia decides to point its massive network of military satellites directly at the Middle East, there is absolutely nowhere for American forces to hide. Russia is acting as the ultimate eye in the sky for the Iranian military. They are taking high-resolution pictures of American troop locations, ship movements, and logistics hubs. And they are handing those exact coordinates straight over to the commanders launching the ballistic missiles. This is exactly why Iran has been able to land such devastating, highly accurate strikes on massive energy facilities like Ras Laffan. They are not just firing blindly into the dark and hoping for a lucky hit. They are striking with absolute pinpoint precision because they have Russian intelligence guiding their weapons. And the Wall Street Journal report makes Russia's ultimate motivation incredibly clear. Moscow wants to keep its closest Middle Eastern partner entirely in the fight. Russia has spent the last few decades trying to fracture the American-led global order, and they have finally found the perfect proxy war to make it happen. They don't have to risk the lives of Russian soldiers or deploy their own expensive aircraft carriers. They are letting the Iranian military do all of the heavy physical lifting. Russia is essentially treating the Middle East like a massive, real-world testing ground for their advanced technology. They get to see exactly how their new satellite targeting systems perform against top-tier American air defenses, and they get to do it without ever officially declaring war on the United States. This level of deep, operational military cooperation completely changes the math for the Pentagon, because the United States is no longer just fighting a regional power with a decent missile stockpile. They are fighting a proxy army that is being actively funded, upgraded, and guided by a global superpower. Every time the U.S. Navy intercepts an incoming drone over the Gulf, they have to wonder if that drone was built using Russian blueprints and guided by Russian satellites. It creates an absolute nightmare scenario for the military commanders trying to secure the region. Because you cannot establish deterrence against an enemy that has an infinite supply of superpower intelligence. Putin knows that every single day the United States is tied down fighting a massive war in the Gulf is a day that Washington is completely distracted from countering Russian influence anywhere else on the map. It is the ultimate geopolitical trap, and Russia doesn't even have to fire a single weapon to spring it. They are just handing Iran the map, giving them the drones, and watching the United States bleed physical resources. And while the American military is completely bogged down trying to secure the Middle East, the rest of the world's autocratic leaders are using this massive distraction to solidify their own absolute power. Just look at what is happening over in North Korea right now while the world's cameras are pointed at the Gulf. Kim Jong-un just held his country's parliamentary elections, and the results are a terrifying reminder of total authoritarian control. He officially won the election with a staggering 99.93% of the vote. It is an absolute mockery of the democratic process, executed while the global police force is entirely occupied elsewhere. Dictators and autocrats across the globe are looking at the massive chaos in the Middle East, and they are realizing that the United States is currently stretched entirely too thin to do anything about them. Russia is actively using the Iranian military as a massive, heavily armed battering ram to exhaust the Pentagon. And as the Russian satellite intel continues to pour into Tehran, the accuracy of these strikes is only going to get deadlier, which means the physical cost of this war is about to completely shatter the American domestic economy. Because while the geopolitical chess match is happening thousands of miles away, the massive, unavoidable economic blowback is finally hitting the shores of the United States. And the sheer panic it is causing inside the White House is completely unprecedented. Because while the geopolitical chess match is happening thousands of miles away, the massive, unavoidable economic blowback has finally hit the shores of the United States. And the sheer panic it is causing inside the White House is completely unprecedented. We are no longer just talking about the theoretical cost of funding a distant military campaign. We are talking about the physical destruction of the American middle-class budget in real time. The moment those Iranian missiles slammed into the Ras Laffan LNG facility in Qatar, the physical energy markets went into an absolute, uncontrollable tailspin. Right now, the price of Brent crude oil has violently surged to $110 a barrel. That is an astronomical threshold that fundamentally breaks the basic math of the American economy. When crude oil hits $110, everything in your physical life becomes significantly more expensive. The cost of filling up your car to drive to work is just the very first domino to fall. Because the diesel fuel that powers the massive freight trucks delivering your groceries just doubled in price. The energy required to physically manufacture steel, concrete, and basic household goods becomes entirely unsustainable. And we are already seeing the devastating real-world impact of this exact supply chain collapse. Official data just confirmed that physical producer price index inflation has spiked to a 13-month high. Think about what that actually means for an ordinary family sitting at the kitchen table trying to pay bills. 13 months of careful, grinding economic recovery wiped out in a matter of 3 weeks of warfare. And the chairman of the Federal Reserve just issued a stark public warning to the entire country. Jerome Powell went on the record stating that the economic implications of the Iran war are completely uncertain. He explicitly warned the American public that these skyrocketing energy prices are going to push overall inflation significantly higher. And here is the absolute most terrifying part about the Federal Reserve making that statement. They cannot just print more money or change a policy to magically fix a burning natural gas plant in Qatar. The Fed is completely powerless to stop physical supply chain inflation caused by ballistic missiles. They are effectively telling the American public to brace for a massive, unavoidable wave of economic pain. And this massive reality check has triggered an absolute political earthquake in Washington, D.C., because the President of the United States is suddenly staring down the barrel of a massive domestic crisis, and he has just executed one of the most stunning, rapid military reversals in modern history. According to breaking reports from the Wall Street Journal, President Trump is now actively demanding an immediate halt to all strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure. Just think about the incredible head-spinning irony of that specific, urgent demand. The United States and Israel just spent 3 weeks systematically bombing Iranian gas plants and anti-ship missile sites. They launched heavy bunker busters and devastating airstrikes to physically cripple Tehran's ability to fight. But the exact moment Iran actually retaliated and set the Gulf's physical energy grid on fire, the American president is the one desperately slamming his foot on the brakes. He realizes that if this violent tit-for-tat energy war continues for even one more week, the American economy is going to completely collapse under the crushing weight of skyrocketing gas prices. He knows that everyday American voters do not care about the strategic military value of an Iranian gas plant. They care that they can no longer afford to physically feed their families or heat their homes. So the commander-in-chief is now actively trying to call off the very same strikes his own military just authorized. It is a terrifying admission that the United States is officially trapped in an unwinnable economic hostage situation. Washington wants to dismantle the Iranian military and re-establish total control over the Middle East. But Iran has successfully linked their own physical survival directly to the survival of the global economy. They have engineered a massive geopolitical dead man's switch that no one knows how to disarm. If the American military decides to completely destroy Iran's domestic energy sector, Iran has proven they will use Russian satellite intelligence to physically destroy 20% of the world's LNG supply in response. They will launch a barrage of ballistic missiles at the Saudi refineries and the UAE gas fields. And they will physically bankrupt the United States taxpayer before they ever sign a treaty of surrender. This is the brutal, terrifying reality of modern asymmetric warfare in the 21st century. You do not need 1,000 fighter jets or a dozen aircraft carriers to defeat a global superpower. You just need to systematically target the physical supply chains that keep their domestic economy running. You force them to choose between winning a geopolitical war in the desert and physically surviving back home. And right now, it looks like Washington is finally realizing exactly how much this war is actually going to cost. The entire global security map has been completely redrawn in just 21 days of combat. Israel and the United States have crossed the ultimate red line by assassinating top Iranian commanders. Iran has retaliated by systematically setting the Middle Eastern energy grid completely on fire. Qatar has expelled Iranian officials as their most prized physical infrastructure burns to the ground. Russia is quietly pouring advanced drone technology and satellite targeting data straight into Tehran. And the American president is frantically trying to stop the fighting before physical inflation destroys his own country. We are watching a localized conflict mutate into a massive, uncontrollable global economic disaster. And absolutely no one in Washington, Tel Aviv, or Tehran seems to have a viable exit strategy. I want to hear exactly what you guys think about this massive, unprecedented pivot from the White House. Do you think the United States is officially backing down because the physical cost of oil is just too high? Or do you think this is just a temporary pause before the military unleashes an even larger escalation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, because I read every single one of them. This situation is incredibly volatile, and the physical reality on the ground is literally shifting by the hour. Make sure you are subscribed and have those notifications turned on so you do not miss the next breaking update. Stay vigilant, keep your eyes on the physical supply chains, and I will see you in the next video.